Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to mourn the tragic passing of a friend for many, a source of guidance, a knowledge bank for entrepreneurs everywhere. We are gathered here to mourn the passing, tragically, of the Discover Your Inner Awesome podcast. That's right, motherfuckers. The Discover Your Inner Awesome podcast is dead. After almost 4 years and nearly 130 episodes, I took it out back and I shot it. Well, sort of. Here's the deal. Every brand has its day, and the Discover Your Inner Awesome brand, at least in podcast form, no longer served me. So I buried it. I took it out back. I shot it. I buried it 6 feet underground. But it's fighting out of the grave in a new fashion. Because where Discover Your Inner Awesome died, I present to you the rebirth. Introducing Startup Hypeman, the podcast. All right, let's rewind here and let me just talk you through my decision. So many of you have been listening to the show for the last 4-ish years, have come to love the Discover Your Inner Awesome brand. You love the name, you love the topics, the content, and everything. But for those of you who are newer to the show, quick walk down memory lane. I began this podcast with the co-founder of my previous company, which was called Idea Lemon. My co-founder for that company, his name was Martin. And Martin and I started the Discover Your Inner Awesome podcast purely as an experimental project. It gained traction pretty quickly, so we kept doing it. But at that time, and for the purpose of that business, it was really a different show. The format was generally the same, but the topics were more about like life exploration. It touched on a little bit of business, but really was more about like figuring out who you are as a person, a lot of personal development, life exploration stuff. In 2016, towards the end of 2016, when we shut down Idea Lemon, I actually purchased ownership of the show moving forward, as well as the Discover Your Inner Awesome name. We had one sort of bridge season where Martin stayed on as the co-host, but it was no longer part of Idea Lemon. It was just the Discover Your Inner Awesome podcast. It was floating without a home, but it was called the Discover Your Inner Awesome podcast, as opposed to previously it was Idea Lemon presents the Discover Your Inner Awesome podcast. After that one bridge season, Martin and I very respectfully and understandably parted ways as podcast hosts, because we had already parted ways as business partners. And just to clarify, we're still friends and everything. Just doing a podcast together didn't make sense anymore. So I was in search of a co-host, and I still liked doing those podcasts that were kind of life exploration-y. So I brought on a friend named Victoria Cohen, who, if you were listening to the show at that time, you know she stayed on for a couple seasons as the co-host. The show was getting more business focused, but still a little touch of the life exploration stuff, but more so through the lens of like entrepreneurship. And then as Victoria sort of came to the end of her run, part of the reason of that was because I knew I needed to take the show in a more startup specific focused direction. And she just wasn't able to contribute to those kinds of conversations, given the background of her work and what she knows and everything like that. She just wasn't really part of the startup ecosystem at all. But on the sort of life exploration, personal discovery side prior to that, I thought she was great. So Victoria and I decided to part ways after season 9 of the show. So I kicked off season 10 of the show going into the final quarter of 2018 for the first time ever doing the show as a solo host. And I was actually kind of always afraid to do a show solo. I thought I needed a co-host to bounce ideas off of. I didn't know if I could carry a show on my own. Turns out I really like doing a show solo. I can steer the conversation exactly in the direction I want to. I don't have to worry necessarily about like how do I tee up the co-host to be able to, insert themselves. And I was able to just really continue to have great conversations with the guests. But if you noticed, season 10 got very, very specific towards startup topics. Things that are like tactical advice to help you build and grow your business. And that's what brings us to today. I have decided that Discover Your Inner Awesome as a podcast, the Discover Your Inner Awesome podcast is officially dead. And if you look at your podcast app right now, if you're on iTunes, if you're on Spotify, if you're on Google Play, or even if you're on the website, you will notice that it no longer says Discover Your Inner Awesome Podcast. It now says Startup Hypeman, the podcast. So moving forward, what does that mean? Well, I think the description of the show is pretty simple, and it's what I've put in the actual iTunes and show description, which is that this is the only show that takes you inside the minds of successful entrepreneurs who share the strategies, processes, and mindsets to help your startup grow up and become a company you're proud of. And if you look at the new album art, like the thumbnail for the show, it says Startup Hypeman Podcast or Startup Hypeman, learn, grow, scale. That's what this is about. Helping you learn so you can grow and scale your company, your startup. I want you to take what you learn from this show, implement the lessons, the strategies, the processes that our guests talk about, implement them for your business so that your startup can grow up into a thriving company and one that you're proud to own and be part of. So what else comes with this rebrand to Startup Hypeman, the podcast? Well, you can expect punchier episodes. I'm doing my best to record 30 to 40 minute episodes and really be more around 30 minutes of content and then tack on a few minutes for the introduction and the outro. I'm also, as I've mentioned, getting into more highly relevant topics for you, the startup founder, or you, the startup leader. Breaking away from the general life, business pondering stuff and going hard on these strategies and processes and sometimes mindsets to help you grow your business. For example, here are some upcoming guests and topics for season 11 of Startup Hypeman, the podcast. We've got Chris Martinez, who's the founder and CEO of Dude Agency, talking about how do you hire great people. We have a whole conversation around building a good hiring practice to properly vet candidates, make sure they've got the right skills and competency, and make sure they'd be a right cultural fit for your team. We've got Emmanuel Strashnov, the founder and CEO of Bubble. And Bubble is a tech platform that is trying to make coding obsolete, allowing you to build an app or a website or anything without knowing a single line of code, much like Squarespace has done for websites. And what Emmanuel comes on the show to talk about is how do you get customers to fund your early development. Amanda Greenberg, the founder and CEO of Ballooner, a SaaS platform, talking about creating a category for your product, for your company, like creating a new category in the marketplace. She's actually going to be on for 2 episodes because when we talked and said, what do we want to talk about? She had 2 great topics. And I was like, you know what? You're going to be the first guest ever who gets 2 episodes, not as a 2-parter, but 2 separate episodes of 2 different topics. So we will be talking about how to create a category for your product and company. And then a second conversation about how to land a prominent, famous angel investor, because that's what she's done with her company. We'll also have June Marshall, head of Repario, which is another SaaS platform, talking about developing a go-to-market strategy and figuring out where do you pivot within that go-to-market strategy. We've got AJ Goel, the founder of GMass, which is a technology that installs into Google Chrome. And he's talking about how do you scale a company with minimal customer service, which is actually against, logical wisdom. Scaling with minimal customer service. We've got a few more already recorded and some more that are yet to be recorded, but that's just a small sample of how these topics are going to specifically support your company's growth, your startup's growth, so that you can grow up in the way that you want to build a company you're proud of that has a lasting impact. Also new for Startup Hypeman, the podcast, I'm introducing something called #HypeTalks. For the first time ever, I'll be doing solo episodes. And what that means is you're going to get periodically throughout the season 5 to 10 minute mini episodes. Think of them as short lectures or talks where I specifically walk through a concept or a strategy to help your sales, your marketing, and or your investor pitch stand out. I am super excited to share these hashtag hype talks with you. They'll be released periodically throughout the season. So you'll get your new interview episodes on Mondays, and then you'll see every so often on a Thursday or a Friday, a hype talk. Here are the first 5 topics I'm going to give you a preview on, the first 5 topics for hype talks. I'm going to share with you how to stand out at conferences and trade shows. I'm going to talk through buyer motivations. What do you do when the numbers don't tell the whole story? How do you look behind the numbers to find the true motivations of a buyer or the true reasons behind a problem? I'm going to walk through why your personal brand sucks on LinkedIn. I'm also going to walk through how to get people to actually view the content you post on LinkedIn to grow your brand and to grow awareness for your company, potentially even get customers. I'm going to talk through something I call the chef to table technique on how to delight your customers after they purchase from you. I'll also go into things like reading articles that are startup focused that I find interesting and providing my reflections on it. And one of those that I'll do for you out of the gate in those first 5 hype talks is an article I recently read on Medium titled "Everyone Wants Sales Leads, but No One Wants to Sell." I'm going to review that article and share my thoughts, my insights, my takeaways for you. This is Startup Hypeman, the podcast. Discover Your Inner Awesome is dead, motherfuckers. We are starting a new chapter. I'm doubling down on this show, but we are starting a new chapter. It is Startup Hypeman, the podcast. And of course, if you weren't aware already, I mean, you should be if you've been listening. But if you are a startup, an emerging tech startup or tech service company, we need to talk. Specifically if you're a SaaS company with the request a demo button on its homepage. Because you need to make sure that demo is the crispest, clearest, sexiest thing possible. You need to make sure that you are able to stand out to your prospective customers and stand apart from your competition. You need to be able to have a presentation in that demo that blows people away and gets them to convert to customers. Oh, and if you're hiring people, hiring new sales reps, you got to make sure they are properly onboarded and trained and know your company's story. So please reach out to me if you want to have that conversation. What I can promise you is just from an initial conversation, you're going to get probably 1 to 3 ideas or tactics you can put into place immediately, even without my help. Just reach out to me, Rajiv, R-A-J-I-V, at startuphypeman.com. Oh, and if you want to be a guest on this show, if you think you've got the credentials, the qualifications, I'll let you decide what that means. Email me, Rajiv, R-A-J-I-V, at startuphypeman.com, because I've still got some open slots on the back end of this season. So let's talk. All right, everybody. That was the funeral, the eulogy, and the rebirth. We're starting fresh. We're starting new. It's Startup Hypeman, the podcast, and the new season kicks off February 4th. I will catch you soon. But in the meantime, stay hyped, my founders. Raj Nation out.